Hello, and welcome to the JubilAge podcast with your host, Carol Chiarito. Carol, good to be with you again. Nice to see you inside Betty. It always makes me feel good, if you really want to know the truth.
Hey, Bill. Good to see you again.
Yeah, welcome back. I know you were on a little bit of a vacation. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Italy is an amazing place. I learned a lot of things and walked more than I've walked probably in the last 3 years, but it was good. Uphill all the way.
It helps with all the pasta and all the great food you got to eat there while you're
That's
there, right?
true. You can eat. Well, it was gelato I probably tried every gelato stand every other
that's
block.
important. That's good. So anybody listening, if you need a recommendation for a gelato stand, just, send in a request to Carol and say which one.
That's right. And how you choose the best ones. That's true.
Yeah. So what do we have for the listeners today?
We are going to be hearing from a friend of mine who is an icon in the industry, and his name is Drew Shumski. He's from outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but he has offices in several other locations, which we'll talk a little bit about. But we're going to talk about putting the puzzle together, not only of financial planning, but how it fits together with the legal side of things. And Drew brings such great knowledge about how he has done this himself and how he works with lawyers. I think he might even have a lawyer on his staff. We'll talk about that as well. So, Drew, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Carol, and it's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Hey, I was reading your bio before the show today. And all the years that I've known you, I didn't realize that you attended Montana State University.
That is true. So Bozeman was a great place to start and everything. Then military service after that, and served in the Army. Then I got into the wonders of the financial services and financial advisory business.
So how long have you been a financial advisor?
It's been over 20 years now. So I'm not going to give the age because I don't want to date myself, but I've been in the business now actually almost closer to 25 years now.
Wow. TikTok, right? Time flies.
Exactly.
I know. And we actually met at the $1 Million Roundtable doing, or did we? Maybe we met at NAFA first.
I think we met at the $1 Million Roundtable first. And of course, we both were very involved with the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors also.
Right.
So you and I have been to a lot of the industry functions, that's for sure.
That's true. And I have to say, you've been a mentor to me in many ways. You probably don't know that, but from a distance, I'm always watching what you're doing, listening to what you're talking about at the various conventions that we attend. And I see how you run your business, and it is, do this, pat yourself on the back, because you've done an awesome job, and the people that you surround yourself with is amazing. And I did an earlier podcast about that. It's like, it's not really what you know, it's sometimes who you know and who you surround yourself with that makes you a better advisor. Wouldn't you agree?
That is most definitely the truth. I wouldn't be where I am today without the mentorship of some of the legends in the industry on both legal and on financial advisory and true insurance planners. And that's one thing I even learned on the insurance side to say, do you want to be an insurance salesperson or an insurance designer? And that really hit key. I want to specialize in designing the insurance plan, not just selling one.
Yeah. I think my terminology was, do you want to be a product peddler or an actual planner? And that's the truth, because there's so many product peddlers out there. But one of the things I also found on your bio, which I love, is your philosophies. Drew's philosophies are true net rate of return / tax management returns. Here it comes. You better look at the E in P&E earnings, and the best kind of insurance is the insurance that pays. I love that. I love that.
It's simple common sense. And that's how we kind of pitch our motto and our company name on net worth asset management, because we are looking at the true net return and looking at tax brackets. And that's one of the things we do when we're first engaging our client and getting the full fact finder. And it's not just for financials, but it's also for proper estate planning, taxation planning, possible elder law planning, where it all can wrap up together. But a lot of times we will ask for that tax return so we have an idea of the pattern on where they are, what's their future going to be, and how we can put that into scenario in wealth management and also with insurance planning.
Exactly. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And that crazy little tax form that we fill out every year, sometimes we're oblivious to how much we're actually losing and falling through that hole in our pocket.
And what I call say, do we really, I mean, we all get frustrated for how much we're paying our silent partner, the governments that we all live in. So
that's true. And on top of that, then, is the whole subject of our podcast today, the legal side of things. And there's an article that was in the Insurance Network News. I think it's where I found it or where we got it. It was by Paul Fieldman. And you talked about having two sets of eyes on the financial plan, not only the financial person, you, aka you, but also the legal representative in the person's life. Do you have a will? You know, I do that. You ask your clients, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? They say, yeah. But sometimes advisors don't take it to that next level of taking a look at it, like you said, and working together with the lawyer. So one of the things you said in this article was we both look at it with different sets of eyes, especially when my job is to fund the documents and his job is to make the documents, to make sure the wishes of the clients happen properly. It's kind of one of those things that, are you kidding me? Why doesn't everyone think of this? Of course, if A plus B should equal C, why are we keeping them as far apart as A to Z sometimes? So let's talk about your approach to this, Drew, and give us some insights on how it works.
Well, very well. And just like attorneys and advisors, there's good and bad, and who you can communicate with. I've been lucky enough to partner with some great attorneys in different states that were service to my clients, but it gave us an opportunity for them to learn how I work and what I'm looking for. But I also learned what their philosophy was and what they're doing. Okay. And on the legal side, yes, their job is to make the documents that are effective for the client to suit their needs. Well, a lot of times when they're not working together, those documents don't get funded. So nothing's changed. Say if you have a trust made in one state, well, there's no assets in the trust. That means that trust is worthless because there's nothing funding it for the protection of the client or to do what the objective of that trust was if there's no assets in it. And other times when there are certain assets that need to be put into it, sometimes the legal documents need to be done first before I can do the funding mechanism.
Right.
And one of the better ways to do it is sometimes with an insurance product. And I'm not going to say what kind of product because that goes on the design factor of things. And I have sold and I also paid off on every type of insurance you can imagine, from disability to long-term care to whole life, universal life, index universal life to term. And people don't care what type it is. They just want to know the proper amount of funds are going to take care of the need at that time. And that's how we kind of look at when we design an insurance portfolio. And it might just be one product. We don't know until we find out what the problem is so we can come up with a solution. But it's very important sometimes because if you're taking the insurance first, then you have to transfer it into the trust. That could cost 3 to 5 years on a look-back provision if something would happen to that person in that time period. So sometimes it's better to wait until the trust is done and then have the proper ownership and issues on that policy to avoid those look back periods.
Right. And it's also confusing, I think, to the general public of, do I get a will or do I get a trust? And oh my gosh, trusts are so expensive. But at the end of the day, you know, it kind of depends what's right for the person's overall asset base, overall wishes for when they do pass, or something does go wrong with the long-term care side of things or the disability side of things. So can you just, when you're talking about the trusts being funded, could you just clarify that a little bit for maybe some of our listeners who aren't familiar with a trust and how it really works and the funding of that?
Sure. And this can happen in each state, not just in the United States or Canada. They all have their, the different countries have their laws in place for this, but also the different provinces and states in the United States have different laws where it comes down to that. Also depends what kind of planning is being done. But that's where the attorney comes in. He'll figure out what kind of trust is needed, if needed. Sometimes he can do another type of plan, depends on the situation, and sometimes a trust is not needed. But that's where the attorney was to make the call on and say, okay, this is the legal plan to make everything work according to the law of that state. And that's now some people might have dual residency. Where is their primary resident at? What state? Because I have a lot of clients that are snowbirds right now, and that's why I have multiple offices to service them. So we have to look at what is your primary state and make sure the person is with the bar and understand the laws of that state. And that's when I get together with them. So I'm part of that planning process with the attorney. And if I kind of see something, I kind of give them like the financial aspect of things, the pluses and minuses. And the attorneys appreciate that too, because it helps them put their plan together. And a lot of time it's a good education for me. And it says, no, this is where it has to work in this state. And this is the law. And this is why we have to do it this way. Fine. So I'm making sure I'm doing it right. So if it's not done right, sometimes we can do more harm than good for our client, and the objective doesn't match. And that's why having us both in the same room at the same time in the planning process and having that relationship with the legal side with the attorneys really help what we've done over the years, which really benefited our clients when it truly was needed.
Right. It makes so much sense. So you, when you're meeting with a client and you ask them about their legal situation, and they say, oh, I have a trust and this is my attorney, Joe Schmo over at whatever. How do you make that connection with their attorney, and how do you get everyone on the same page? Talk about that process a little bit for the advisors who might want to follow your lead here.
Well, I do work with certain attorneys because I know them if they don't have a relationship. And sometimes I'll get a waiver form signed by the client, and just so I can start a rapport and say, hey, here's the financial situation. And sometimes I'll ask for a copy of the legal documents. And then also if the attorney needs a copy of the financial fact finder and the information, because they might have missed something or something wasn't done. And when we can make arrangements to make sure it's done, so those documents work. And a lot of attorneys do appreciate it because they think it's done because they did the documents, and they put engagement letters for certain things to be done, but they don't get completed. And that's one thing I do with the attorneys and everything. I make sure everything's completed and have the new documents. And I give the attorney a copy of it and the client a copy. Okay, this is done. This part is funded. We make sure it works. And sometimes we review things ourselves because a couple years back, I had a client who said, yes, I have a will. Great. You have a copy of it. And I'll ask them. And this guy, and why this is important, this is where you rather do planning rather than be in a football game when it's 4th and 40 or the person's getting ready to pass away or the game is over, the person passed away, and you could possibly lose millions that way or have a huge tax bill which could have been avoided legally. And I'm not talking about doing anything, just simple planning and making sure the beneficiaries and everything are right. But going back to this case I was telling you, this person literally got out of the hospital on a hospice situation, stage 4 emphysema. But he was very coherent and was sound mind and was with him and his wife. And basically, do you have a will? Yeah. Can I just take a quick peek at it? Well, one thing that caught me was the will was done in 1986. But all of a sudden, when I looked at the fact finder, it said him and his wife were married in 1993. Okay, we might have a problem here. And we did. Because when I asked about the information on the house, and I said, can I see the billing of the deed? The deed in the house was just in his own name. Then I asked another question, say, do you have a safety deposit box? Yes. In fact, I have a lot of money in there. Well, first of all, I kind of talked to him, say, well, you're actually losing money when money's in the mattress in the safety deposit box because you still have inflation going upwards, but your money's not growing in the safety box or in a box or under the couch. And he says, oh, but now we had a bigger problem. That number was 6 figures, like over $150,000. If we didn't know that, in fact, I told him the very next day to take it out and put it in his joint checking account with him and his current wife. Because if he would have died with that will, which had to be turned into the courts, his wife would have lost the house and the $150,000 and anything else that would have passed through the estate on the will, because his ex-wife was the beneficiary and executor of everything. And even though it was like literally almost 50 years ago, he got divorced and going, we got to change this like now. Okay. And that's where I used a local attorney and said, what are you doing? And he asked me, I'm seeing a guy on auction going, and I'm going, okay, we got to get this done quick. But he was okay upstairs, just the emphysema affected his breathing. And I said, point blank, you need to talk to this guy now and we need to bring some witnesses. And he said, what's such a hurry? I said, here's the current information. I'm changing beneficiaries and taking this over now and getting this signed. So literally, he talked to the client on the phone. We literally, from one day to the next day, stopped everything we were doing, went to him and had a new will and new power of attorneys and healthcare derivatives so his wife could be the person rather than the ex-wife. And then also updated the deed of the house to have the husband and wife. Because not would there have been inheritance tax because the ex-wife wasn't the current spouse, but also the current wife would have been in a big pickle if we didn't change everything. So that's where legal and financial, we both were able to do our roles to help these people. And of course, he'd want to give it to his current wife that he had for the last almost 40 years rather than the ex-wife.
Of course. Oh, my gosh.
So that is kind of on the extremes, but we notice these things all the time just on a review or looking at a tax return and noticing something. Why are you in a higher tax bracket? Okay, maybe a different plan here. Then I talk to the attorney and make sure he didn't see anything legal-wise that's going to hurt the estate or hurt on the planning there. Or what assets do I put into a trust? They need current income still. How do we do it? Do we do it on gifting? Do we use it with the unified tax credit? How do we fund the trust mechanism? Or on a second marriage, okay, we want to make sure that the wife, and everybody says, well, give it my IRA. He says, no, give the IRA to the spouse. There's no real penalty. It's just normal income taxes. But if the kids they got 10 years and it can put them in a higher tax bracket. If you want to take care of the second marriage, use life insurance for that. It's the cheap, most economic way to do it. And you can also put in a trust there also, because if something happens to you, the life insurance has it for the kids to make sure the kids are taken care of and get out of that situation. But that's where you don't want to practice law. You want to have the attorneys do that aspect of things. And that's why both rules are critical. And that's why wherever I'm doing practices, I do have an attorney involved.
That's great. And I think that one thing I'd like to point out is a lot of people think that a trust is for someone who maybe is in the higher net worth tax bracket or the higher net worth earnings. And that's not necessarily true. You know, there's a lot of reasons to look at doing a trust. And this isn't, I'm not being sponsored by any lawyers here, by the way. But you know, if your children maybe are disabled, or maybe, you know, one of my clients, her son has MS and he really could never get everything that she has in one lump sum, or whatever those reasons are, you know, autistic children or even grandchildren. So it's more than just your spouse. It's the whole entire picture and how you want things to work. Right. And that
is true. And that's where the special needs planning comes into place, because some of the kids might have current benefits and they say, oh, I'll leave my kid $50,000. Say, well, great. You just disqualified them for a couple of months. That money's going to be gone. And then they got to reapply once they're bankrupt again, basically, to qualify for benefits again. And that's where a special needs trust or sometimes on that situation, special needs and elder law comes into play onto the planning aspect. And that's where the attorneys come in to make sure it's done. And that's where we make the trust or the documents the beneficiary, which is a different identity, so we don't hurt the special needs kids. And that's where it's very important, too, where we don't want to just say, hey, yeah, make your kids beneficiaries. Says that's where we want to say we need to get a lawyer involved. If not, we're really going to hurt your kids, or we're going to hurt your spouse, or anything right there. So it doesn't take a lot of money, but it can make things a lot easier for the family, especially with special needs children or special needs adults sometimes too, because they've been taking care of them the last 40 to 50 years, and then they're older. And if they die, who's going to take care of their adult child? So that's where that documents come into. And that's where the attorney comes in also, where you not necessarily have to have a lot of money, but the attorney can make the call. Here's the guidelines, here's the cutoffs, where a lot of people, it's not that much money, and sometimes the trust fits, but in some states it might not fit. And especially if you have certain look back periods and stuff like that, or hey, we got to eat somehow, but we got to make sure one spouse is taken care of, not the other. There might be a different type of planning that we can bypass the trust and do a different type of maneuver. And that's where the attorney comes in handy, because I almost maybe say, oh, I thought everything needs to go into trust. And the attorney says, not necessarily. We're going to do it this way. Here's the new laws on it. This is what's countable. This is what's not. This is what the at-home spouse can keep now. And that's where we did the documents to kind of back that up. And also for retirement plannings and everything, what do we bypass? And that can go there and make sure the proper planning's done. But that's why legal is so important, because you don't want to be giving recommendations on that as an advisor, because you don't want to be practicing law and giving the wrong advice, because your malpractice, your E&O insurance will not cover for legal when you're not one.
Right. And, you know, as we all say, the one constant thing in life is change. And to not review your will as well as your financial plan every single year, or even a couple times a year, is a huge mistake that a lot of people make by not bothering their financial advisor. If your financial advisor is not calling you at least once a year to review what's going on, you know, bug them or find a new advisor.
And that's it. And also there's no material change. Like we had one actually a couple months ago where the person who was supposed to be the executor, he passed away first. So we had to talk to them and update that and the financial advisory does that. Okay. And normally what we say, okay, we need to meet with your financial advisor, insurance agent once a year, just to review. And I don't care if you're just talking about the weather. you should, as an advisor, you got to have the fingers on the pulse of what's going on with your clients. And especially nowadays, we have a lot of stuff going on, especially in the US. We have a major election that can change policies drastically. And that's where having your team together, and I call it a team. It's not just the person who's selling you something or your advisory. And you got to have someone who's willing to work with both, or someone that knows how to work with both. And that's very crucial for the client's well-being. And that's why I look for my clients too. And then a complete legal review every 3 years. Now, a lot of times they say, oh, I don't want to do a new trust. You're probably not going to need a new trust. A lot of times they'll do what's called a carousel and just update or change some things for the current laws. And that's the trust is still in effect for that date. You're just updating. Or you might want a new trustee or something like this here because, hey, we had a trustee that passed away, or there was a falling out. Okay, there's a clause there to switch the trustee. Okay, who's the backup trustee? We put this into place. And everybody says irrevocable, revocable. Well, there could be triggering events for that too, but that's where legal comes in. And that's where they're giving the proper advice, and you're making sure that advice is funded and executed.
Yeah, so important. One other thing that you spoke of early on in the conversation was the snowbirds that you have. So that's my goal. I'm going to be a snowbird one day. I go to Florida as much as I possibly can, but people who actually make the move and are no longer snowbirds, but actually take up a new residence in a new state.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another little light bulb right now that I'd like to point out to anyone who's listening. If you moved from your home state that you lived your whole life or whatever to a new state to retire, Arizona or Florida or wherever it might be, the first thing you should do is review all of these, because the state laws are so different. Every state has their own little turns and twists. And
that is very important, because Florida has some great senior protection laws in the state of Florida. But you should also have a Florida attorney to address some things. Then also, what state was your trust executed? Can it be in a different state as the resident of that trust? One of the advantages of Florida is there's no taxation. Some states do. But you also got to watch out for all the assets, because if you have multiple assets, and let's say that you have a Florida property or you have a New York or New Jersey property, okay? If it's in your name, that property in that state could be subject to state taxes in those states. Or maybe we might want to review and put that property in the trust. So if something does happen to you, okay, the trust is making the transaction because it's still a living entity. And there's no, and that's where legal comes in to get the proper advice and how to set that up. And so sometimes we're working with two sets of attorneys in different states just to make sure it is a smooth transaction.
Yeah. It sounds really complicated, but I think that, again, if you go to the right advisor, my presentation for clients, and you need to have me come and do a party like it's 1959 for your clients. I'd love to come to the villages in Florida, and I'm not far from there, actually. But part of what I talk to for my advisors, our conversation is who's on your boat. My whole presentation is about a boat, and all the people on the boat with the oars in the water need to be going in the same direction. And who is on your boat, or who should be on your boat if they're not. And let's talk about how that all works together. But at the end of the day, it's the financial advisor, in my opinion, that should be and I forgot the term, but the hitting the drum and beating the drum so that all those oars are going in at the same time and moving that boat forward. Because if no one's doing that, you're going to end up either going around in circles, or you're going to end up in the rocks on shore, and it's going to be a train wreck or a boat wreck, as I say. But this has been an amazing opportunity to bring this to light, and for people who haven't even thought about bringing their legal team together with their financial team, or as a financial advisor who might be listening who hasn't thought of that themselves. Drew, would you love it if people would reach out to you to ask you some more questions?
Sure.
Can we share that information?
You can sure will be honored to help anybody. Okay.
All right. What's the best way to contact you?
Well, you can contact me at either of my offices. You can go to our website, which is nwam.net. Okay. And we have different offices there that you can contact us, and you can look for my name there. But our Pennsylvania office, the number is 215-368-8681. And basically, we also have let me make sure I'm getting the right extensions. We also have our Gainesville, Florida office, where the number is 352-519-1340.
Great. And we'll put all this information on the description as well. So if you're listening and you want to reach out, if you're an advisor, I can tell you from my over 20 years friendship with Drew, if you have a question as an advisor, he will more than help you and answer your questions and then some. If you're a senior and listening to Drew and maybe live in one of the areas that he has offices and would like to maybe give him an opportunity to look at all your stuff, do it. Do it.
We're also licensed and registered in multiple states too, Carol. So if not necessarily you have to live in Florida or Pennsylvania. If you're in one of our states, or even with we might have an associate that is in your state that you have better access to. We'll be glad to set you up with that team for legal and for financial advisory.
Perfect. Hey, Drew, thanks so much again for being on our show today. It's great to see you again. And
you too.
We don't have to wear a suit this time, so that's nice. Bill, did you have any questions for us to finish off the show?
Yeah, I actually did, because I really everything you were talking about was really commonsensical, and I kept thinking, I don't hear a lot of financial advisors though talking about their relationship with lawyers. I know financial advisors who say, "Oh, well, you need a lawyer, yeah, we've got a couple we recommend." But that's not the same as what you were talking about, Drew. So one is for clients. How can they be sure, or how can they, how can they check in with their financial advisor to make sure that there is that type of coordination that you were talking about? And second, what would be your word of advice to financial advisors out there who aren't coordinating in the way that you're talking about? Because it seems like, listening to this, it's actually really important that they do so.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing is when a client is interviewing the financial advisor, if they're going that route first, they should ask that question: do you have a legal team? Or do you highly recommend one? And ask what is your experience with them? Because normally everybody says, well, here's the name of 3 attorneys, and you don't know what's happening with that client. Who did they contact? You dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. If you're not there leading that conversation, say, hey, when we put out our fact finder, we're naming the attorney on there right away. We're not just leaving that blank. That's part of our process, is to have that relationship. And the ones that I recommend, I have been working with for years, and they've been working with me. Because a lot of time when, like how the sausage is being made, the client's not seeing that I'm with the attorney and we're finalizing the plan, how to make this work. And the good thing, attorneys know the law and they're experts at it. But again, they don't know how the financial advisory part works or how insurance design works. And we have to explain that. And that's where we're the experts at. The attorneys, I found out that most of them don't have a clue. And they don't want to, because they're so focused on what they're good at. It's like, okay, here's your brain surgeon, but you're not going to see him for a broken bone. He's going to operate on your brain, and rightfully so. Well, we're the experts at what we do. They're the experts at what they do. But when we both mesh together, then we know that we have a true bulletproof plan for the client and everything's working accordingly.
I was just going to say, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, when you're looking or you're working with a financial advisor, if you're only working with a broker dealer who doesn't do any insurance at all, sometimes they don't even understand the insurance aspect. Mm-hmm. If you're only working with an insurance agent who doesn't do any broker dealer work, they also may not understand how that all works together. So in my opinion, you should be looking for an advisor who does it all. If I'm going to build a house, I need somebody that has more than just a hammer in his pocket. And so that's important. And
the good analogy for that, Carol, is say, hey, you might be the general contractor, and with ourselves, okay, we have our wealth management team. We have our insurance team, and that's all that they do pretty much to make sure they're put in design. Then when everybody sticks with their expertise, because I don't expect the wealth management people and my CFA to understand insurance. But again, I'm not going to have my insurance agent managing portfolios either. But they're the one, it's their job to maintain what's the best for the product, because not one product's the best fit for anything. And if you really look at it, insurance is a risk management product. Okay, it's like an old saying that I said before, insurance makes a bad investment. But again, investments make bad insurance. That's why you need both into the design. You take care of your risk management on that side. You take care of your investments on the other side. And when they work together and have legal put together with it, then you got a good strategy to put everything going forward.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Yep. That makes complete sense.
Three-legged stool. Very good.
Exactly. So, Carol, we know how to get a hold of Drew if we're interested or we've got questions for him. For financial advisors who are listening to this, who might be wanting to either get some further insight from you on this topic, or maybe, party like it's 1959 with Betty.
That's right.
How do they get a hold of you?
To reach out to Carol, it's easy. Carol at crbydesign.com, or you can even reach us at JubilAge at crbydesign.com. And regarding the Party Like It's 1959, we'd love to schedule it for advisors for their clients. It's an amazing show. It's entertaining. It's fun. And it gives a whole nother feel for the clients to talk about the things that Drew just talked about with the team. It's not one person you're working with, it's a team. And it's amazing what we can make, how the Party Like It's 1959 makes it a fun look at a serious situation. So think about it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, fun does mix well with money, and I mean that seriously, not as a comic thing. A lot of people get so serious about money. They're like, money's such an emotional topic. It's like, well, we can't have fun and talk about money. And this gives me a chance to address a question that I've gotten from several people already. Believe it or not, Carol, they're like, is Betty real? Is she really inside Betty? I'm like, yes, Betty is absolutely real. 100% real. There it is.
If I move, the whole place shakes because it's not on a platform.
I know. It's actually on wheels.
That's right. It's on wheels.
It does come with you, as a matter of fact.
We're dying to go somewhere.
Betty will travel. Yeah. For those who are listening, I was thinking, man, there were a lot of numbers and email addresses and stuff. Don't worry. Look at the show notes. Just check into the show notes. All of that information will be there. You don't have to panic about whether you wrote a number down right or wrong. You'll be able to check it. The other thing I would also urge you to do is, if you are not yet already a subscriber, become a subscriber. Okay, that's easy. You just hit the follow button. That way, every time Carol drops a new episode, you're notified. You can give it a listen. You can enjoy it. And I would ask that if you enjoy it, please tell people about it. Share it with other folks. Word of mouth promotion is absolutely, totally welcome here at JubilAge. So, Carol, as we wrap it up for today, why don't you take us on out of here?
Once again, thanks so much to our guest today, Drew Shumski. And here we are at JubilAge from inside Little Betty 1959 camper. Our goal is to guiding advisors and inspiring seniors. Till next time.
Thank you for tuning in to JubilAge, where we celebrate the joy of aging and explore the financial wisdom to thrive in every stage of life. We hope you found today's conversation insightful, whether you're a financial advisor looking to better serve your senior clients or someone embracing the journey of aging. Remember, aging is a privilege, and with the right knowledge and perspective, it can be a vibrant, fulfilling experience. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share JubilAge with others who could benefit from our discussions. Until next time, keep living, keep learning, and keep celebrating every moment. Stay jubilant.